Hello everyone, it's Mr. G and I'm back. I'm going to be bringing you the first installment on the Java beginners playlist, and we're going to be going over some of the very basics today. So we're going to start off with a few simple things, but they are fundamental aspects of not just Java programming, but programming in general. So today we'll be going over data types, variables, comments, and printing to the console. So let's get right into it. If you notice, I have a programming window up already. This is my programming software that I use. It's called Eclipse, and you can use it to program in Java. There are other alternatives such as NetBeans or IntelliJ. I just use Eclipse because that's what I've been using. So we are going to make a new project here. And we'll just call it my project. Nothing too fancy right now. Okay, we're gonna expand it here. I'm gonna right click this source folder and go to new and go to class. Okay, and I'm gonna name this class main with a capital M. I'm gonna check this box and it'll auto generate this main method for me. So in Java, every single program must contain a main method. It'll look for this main method, and if it doesn't find it, it actually won't compile. It needs this to compile. Um, don't get too caught up on what these words mean. Eventually, you'll learn this, but you don't need to know it for now. But just know that you do need a main method in every single Java program, without exception. Okay. So when we talk about um, programming and Java, the program is going to utilize information, and this information can be represented in a variety of ways. And so we call these ways data types. There's basically different ways of storing data and representing data. So if you can think, just of practical everyday examples, you would represent someone's age with a number, right? Um, Usually we use a whole number for that. So that's different than maybe um, when you go to the store and you look at a soda and it might be 16.9 ounces. That's not a whole number. So we would represent that one a little bit differently. If someone asks you your name, well, that's a word or a bunch of characters together that make up a name. So we'd represent that differently. So those are just a few examples, and I'll cover them today. So let's get right into it. So the most basic data type that we'll be learning about is an integer, which, if you were paying attention in math, integers are whole numbers. Can be positive, can be negative. Now there is a range within programming um, that these numbers can go to, just certain size. So it's I don't remember an integer off the top of my head. I want to say it's negative 64,000 to 64,000, something like that. Um, so the way that you would represent that is with this keyword int here. Now, this brings me to the next point. We're talking about variables. So a variable is similar to the variables that you would use in math. They can hold a value, and it can be any value, ex- um, except in math, variables hold a number. In programming, a variable can hold a number, a letter, a string, which is a group of letters and or numbers. Um, it can hold, just various things. And so, um, and that value can change. Whereas in math, the value doesn't change. Um, Here in programming, if you have an integer, we'll call it x, we can set it to 3. Well, we can also add to it, subtract from it, multiply, whatever, and that value can change. So um, that's basically what a variable is. It's like, think of it as a container that stores a value, and that value can change. So integers. So we have one here, and this is the data type. This is the name of the variable, and this is the value. Now we use this equal sign here, and that just means assign this value to whatever is on this side of the equal sign. And then we put our semicolon at the end of our statement. Most statements in Java require a semicolon at the end. It's just proper syntax. The actual program will not compile if there's not a semicolon at the end of a statement that needs a semicolon. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys um, comments. So we have, if you do double forward slash, you can do a single line comment. And so we're gonna use this for notes. So we have int is an integer or a whole number. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on to our next data type, and then, after I go through all of them, we'll review. Okay, so let's stick with numbers for now. So we may have numbers that are not whole numbers, and we need to be able to represent those in Java. So we have two different numbers that have decimals, or two different data types that have decimals. We'll start with floats. We'll actually use F. And so a float is a floating point number, and it is a decimal number. It doesn't have to have a decimal. I can make it 5 like that, but just to show what I mean. And these can also be negative, so we can say negative 4.378. Okay. Now, if you notice, there's a squiggly line, a red line there, which this ellipse is telling me that there's an error. And what it's saying is for floats, it needs to have, if you're going to use any numbers after the decimal, you need to put an F. That's just what Java does. So float, let's do it like this, is a decimal number. All right. Now we also have another decimal number, which is very similar to float, but it takes up twice the space in memory, but it's twice as precise. So we call them doubles. And we'll go D equals, and this can be the same thing. And you don't have to put anything after that, but you can put a D if you want. Double is a more decimal number. Okay. Usually you'll use doubles um, if you have a smaller program, but floats are usually sufficient for what you need. Okay, so then we have what we call characters. And a character is, I'm sure what you guys know, it's a single letter, number, or special character. It can be a space, it can be the letter I, it can be the number 9. So I am going to choose the letter, we'll say U, okay? Now with a character, you have to use these single quotes here. If you leave the single quotes out, you'll also get an error, just like how we had an error with the float. So let's put our single quotes there. Okay, just for our notes there. All right, and so for a word or a phrase or something like that, we have a special data type called string. And string is special because if you've noticed so far, the previous 4 data types that we've used here all start with a lowercase letter. Strings start with a capital S. And there's a reason for that, but we won't get into that in this tutorial. But strings are words, phrases, they can be empty. Um, I can do that. But you have to enclose them in double quotes. Like, so the character is single quotes, strings are double quotes. Okay, so let's say hello world. All right, can't forget our semicolon. So string is a word. Okay, and we have three more data types. So we have, now going back to whole numbers for a second. Sometimes um, you need a large, really large number that's just outside of the range for integers. So for that, we will use a data type that we call long. So, I mean, we can do something like that, and then you have to put your L there on the end of it. I don't even know what that number is. I'm not counting all those zeros, but it's a big number and it's outside the range of integer. So, outside of the range of integers. All right. Then we have something called a short, which is honestly something I have never used. But shorts are whole numbers, just like integers and longs, but the range is, I think, negative 32,000 to 32,000. And it's just good to save space. An integer takes 4 bytes of memory, whereas a short takes 2. So you can, again, use it if you have a lot of variables that you need to store and they're all whole numbers, but none of them are going to be, outside of that range, then shorts would be pretty good because you can enhance the performance of the program that you're writing here. So can't use that. So we'll just say sh equals, and you could do something like, I don't know, 97, and that'll work. Okay. Takes less memory than int. Okay, and we have one more, and this is our true or false data type. So it's an on or off, a true or a false, something like that. So we call that Boolean, and that is, yeah, basically true or false. So you would type false or true. We'll just do false in this case. You can avoid using booleans if you use other data types. You can just say, 0 or 1 or whatever, but booleans are pretty convenient. So these are the data types that we have. So just to review, um, we have our integers, which are whole numbers. Then we have, let's skip down to longs. So longs are larger whole numbers, and they take up more space than integers, but they allow you to get larger numbers. And these can be negative as well. I can make this negative that. Shorts are smaller whole numbers, and they um, take up less space in memory than integers. We have our floats, which are decimal numbers. We have our doubles, which are more precise decimal numbers, but they take up more memory than floats do. We have characters, which is a single letter, number, or special character. We have to use single quotes with those. Strings, which is a string is a combination of characters. And um, we have booleans, which are true or false. Now, with these variables, you might be wondering, hey, what can I do with that? You know, um, so I'll show you a basic command right now that will allow you to use these, and this is the print command. Every programming language has this, and it'll print to the console, which Eclipse puts down here. The console back in the day, before there were graphical interfaces, was this guy, the DOS prompt. Um, but we don't use that anymore, except for programmers when they want to see stuff. Well, there are other uses for it, but off topic. So in Java, the print command is really long. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is, and we have to get used to it. So it's system with a capital S dot out, and as you can see, Eclipse is trying to help me um, type this method out, but we're just going to type it out. Dot print, and then you put your parentheses, and it's asking us what do we want to put in here. So we can put anything we want here. We can put the number 7, and when we run it, let me run it as a Java. Down here, I don't know if you can see that, it's printing the number 7 to the console. Okay, so that's cool. What if we put in G? Well, if you can see here, we have an error because Java doesn't know what G is right now. We haven't declared it up here or anything. And if we want just the letter G, then we need to put that in single quotes or double quotes, basically printing a character or a string. So if we run that, it gives us the lowercase g. Now for our variables, again, this can store any information. So if, you know, um, we have this hello world string here. If we wanted to type that, imagine if we had this in our program, I don't know, 10 times. You don't want to type this 10 times. You don't want to type hello world every time. That's annoying and it's prone to errors. You might make a mistake one time and you might, type Jello World or something. So um, instead of doing that, we can just put S in here. S is the variable that holds the value, the string value of hello world. So we're going to put it in our print statement and we're going to run that and it prints out hello world for us. We didn't even have to type the whole thing. We did it once. If I copy this, paste it a few more times, imagine if I had to type hello world all these times. Not the biggest deal, but programs can get pretty large and you might have to do it a bunch of times. You also want your programs to automate as much code for you as possible. It's good programming practice because, again, it lessens the amount of errors that you'll make, and it's just less work. It's more reliable. It's just all around better. It's more robust. So if I run this, it'll type hello world a bunch of times. Now, I'm sure you've noticed this looks really weird and bad and it's not spaced out. It needs to be formatted. So the reason why is this print command, it that's all it does. It just prints. It prints whatever you want. But we want to skip lines. We want to get to the next line so this doesn't look so bad. So the main print method that you'll use in Java, instead of print, it'll be print line or print, it's print ln for line. And when you do that, um, yeah, we can just keep that as it went to the next line. So it printed out the value of S, which is hello world, right? And then it skipped to the next line, and then it printed hello world again. Now, if I did another one, because this is a print statement, it would not go to the next line. Okay, you can put anything in this method. As long as it's actually something and it's in the proper format. If I put L in here, it will print whatever this large number is. Well, I guess it's really, really small since it's a negative number, but um, and yeah, so you can do that, and we'll be using that pretty much in every program at some point. Okay, so this has been Mr. G, and I'll be back with another lesson very, very shortly.